Hi, guys. Welcome to the podcast. Today I'm here with Emily Shay. She's an incredible artist. She's one of our newest signed artists, and we want to welcome you to the studio today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So you are an artist. I want to hear a little bit more about, your upbringing. What made you want to be an artist?
I realized very quickly from a young age I had a hard time in school unless I was doodling while I was listening to the teacher. It helped my listening comprehension, but it also helped me just like feel things a lot deeper. So that's how I would honestly just make sense of the world, is through imagery, whether I would just like imagine it or draw it. So I've always just been like a doodler on every corner of every napkin and homework page, my whole life. I think there's different types of smart, right? And I feel like that just kind of came a little bit more naturally to me, and just like imagery and remembering things in that way. And so, yeah, that's honestly just out of like survival. I learned that from a very, very young age.
What I love about artists is that they can visualize the world in a way that other people can't. Something I've been thinking about recently is we as consumers, viewers of art, when we visualize who Jesus Christ is, we're seeing it through the eyes of an artist. The first time that I ever thought of what Jesus would look like, I think of a painting. I think of different artists' depictions of Christ. And it's so cool that the artists have the talent to visualize and make a concept a reality that other people can then, take and implement into their everyday life. So first off, I just want to say thank you for being an artist and, bringing that light into the world. But how do you go about depicting Jesus Christ, knowing that this is how people are going to see Jesus Christ?
Yeah, well, thank you for that observation because it is so powerful. And I agree that even, like, I can't even fathom, how many pieces of artwork I've seen throughout my life that have built upon each other to lead to my own interpretations, right? So it's like how I think it's just so special that we're all just almost like working together and building off of each other. And so I'm incredibly humbled and grateful and honored and intimidated, dare I say. The first time I painted Jesus, I had been putting it off for years. There was this call, and I was too scared, and so it took me a hot minute to really like be willing to. I don't know why it felt so vulnerable, but it's almost like this admittance to heaven, like, how well do I know you, Jesus? And this is gonna like show it all. But it was beautiful because when I finally like was at such a low point that I just needed like that much more of a like visual representation in my life, that's when I finally painted Jesus, and it was so connecting and healing for me that it just like clicked something inside of me that after that it's like I couldn't stop painting Jesus. And so I think about just like the more heart-centered and vulnerable and almost like broken I have been in my life, like that's when not only am I like painting Jesus the most, but also people are resonating with that version of Jesus the most, because my own heart and like openness and reaching for heaven is coming out. And I like to hope that people can feel that as well.
I absolutely think that they can. Looking at your artwork, it's really easy to see when an artist puts their soul into the piece. I recently learned that there's a study of this museum in the Netherlands. They wired connectors to the brain to like test and see people's brain activity, and it proved that your brain is stimulated 10 times more when you see an original painting versus a reproduction. And I really think it's because the artist puts their soul into it. Would you agree?
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. I cannot like emphasize this enough. And when I'm trying to express to people like how powerful an original painting is, it's not just this soul essence that is infused. It's also like you take just color theory, and the amount of layers that light is traveling, light can travel through all these layers and come back up, that it's just this melody, like this like harmony of all these colors coming together that you can't experience through a print. So I think that is everything. But when I'm trying to like help people understand how powerful it is, I tell them, it's like you're driving in the car, listening to your favorite brand on, like just the dinky sound system, and that's great, and you love it, right? And then you compare it to when you are going to see them live, like that feeling and that like passion that you just like, it is so insurmountably like powerful. It's next to none, right?
There's literally nothing comparable to standing in front of an original artwork. And I think there's so much more to it. Like when I stand in front of one of your paintings, I get to stand exactly where you stood and see the piece how you wanted me to see it. Like there's textures and there's colors and the way the light hits, everything is played perfectly. And I'm sure you mess with it for hours and hours and hours and hours, like just countless hours. And when you stand in front of the original, this is exactly how Emily wanted me to see it. And a print, we do our absolute best to get as close as possible. Mm-hmm. And we do a pretty dang good job. We've got, the best scanners in the world, the best colorists, but it's still nothing will ever compare to standing in front of, that piece of artwork because it is a piece of your soul. I want to hear a little bit more about, your life, what you go through. I feel like mental health and struggles like that are so huge in the world that we live in today. How do you wrestle with being a mom and an artist and incorporating that into your artwork?
I have a really hard time with it, honestly. Like you said, mental health is such a struggle in this day and age, and I have been very affected by it. Honestly, even just getting to this like final act of like prepping for my show coming up, it's put me through the absolute ringer. And I was kind of laughing the other day that I'm in my Miss Frizzle era.
Love
but I was like, is it Miss Frizzle or Miss Frazzled? Because I'm just like all over the place, like running around with my head cut off. It feels like that. There's just so much we're trying to do, and this is kind of like a hustle culture, right? It's like we think we're human doings, and that's how like our worth is measured. And I'm a single mom, and I have 3 kids, and I'm homeschooling and working full time. It's like how in the world am I supposed to be able to do it all? And if I come at it from that angle, then I absolutely lose it and crumble, and no amount of caffeine can fix it, unfortunately. But when I'm able to slow down and rest in God very, very intentionally, because I'm so visual, I will often put my prayers like through written word, and so I journal a lot. But I think there's something also really powerful about taking something that's ethereal, like in your mind, but putting it into like real life, whether the spoken word or the written word. But as long as I can slow down for like twice a day and just be really intentional, whether I just lay down and close my eyes and pray or write, but if I can just bring God into my day, then it's crazy. It's almost just laughable, like how much of a difference it makes. And so ideally starting my day with journaling, because it's almost this ritual of releasing to receive, like all this gunk, that's like my subconscious was working through all night, and like for how long I'm able to kind of get it out and with intention bring God into it, and that I'm able to receive where I'm supposed to go that day. But it is truly a gift. So if I can be present and bring God with me, then it makes all the difference. And there's plenty of ache and grief and pain, right? Like we all know that. That's like the everyday. But what I've learned, especially when I'm holding hands with myself, I kind of joke about it, but it's like I feel like we have our spirit and our body, and our bodies, are here on this earth, and we're kind of wired for like fear and this like natural man and trying to just like survive. But then we have our spirit that is divine and not made like from this world. And so if we are able to integrate the two, then that is alignment. And I imagine my soul inside of my body, like holding hands with my body, and like we are here together, we're doing this. And then I imagine God like holding hands with me. And so I don't know, like when I'm able to do that, it's not this like glossy, shiny beauty, but it's that messiness, but it's so beautiful that the beauty and the joy can coexist with the grief and the pain. It's like, how can they coexist at the same time? But they absolutely can. And so I call it the ache and the awe. And that's just like the rhythm, like the dance of the everyday. It's like, yes, there's the ache, but there's also the awe. So, hey, we'll take it.
And I feel like it's in that ache that you really see the beauty. Like, how can you find God if life is always perfect? It's like I've found God when everything's crumbling around me, and He's the only thing that's not. And so, yeah, thank you. Yeah. And there's so much that you went into there, and I want to break it all apart. We got to talk about your show.
Hey.
I want to talk about motherhood, but I guess drawing it all back to just to finish up this little part. What advice would you give to the single mom who's struggling to feel Jesus in her life?
I think for me, the most powerful thing that has helped me and that I believe can help her is seeking support. But there's like a hierarchy, right, of support. And I think God is the number one. When I first started my single mom journey, I watched the movie Harriet. It's on Amazon Prime. It is so good. I highly recommend. But it's all about Harriet Tubman. And, I was feeling pretty sorry for myself. And I'm like, this is the worst. How does it get worse than this? And then watching her life, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so humbled. Like, there are people that have it so much worse. And not that, we're comparing, but we all have our hard stuff. And it's so incredible when we can be inspired and build off of each other. And the phrase that she says, though, in the movie is, it's me and the Lord. It's me and the Lord. And that kind of became my mantra of just like, okay, God, like, it's me and you. What are we going to do today? But then not stopping there, like support is the number one key. Like we just need each other. And so really humbling myself and like going outside of my comfort zone and just like being pretty specific of telling family members like what I need in all different realms of that kind of connection. But then even like expanding into like business support groups and like a quilting circle, just all these different forms where it's like, it's not just surface level connection, but it's that soul level, like where you feel so seen and not just, I just learned that the Hebrew word for worthy means to be seen.
Whoa.
I know. I'm like, is that my next art show? But you can tell there's just so much there. And I think so. Ultimately, it's obviously with God. Like, that's where you're going to find it the most. But with others, you're seeking that, like, deeper feeling seen connection where we're not alone. And we feel it at a core level.
You think of God, and He just sees you so perfectly. And because of Christ, we're all worthy to be seen. Like that, how profound. That's beautiful.
Truly.
So you've got this show coming up on November 6th. For everyone listening, this show will take place at Havenlight Art Gallery. It's in Orem, Utah. You're featuring 30 pieces, right?
Yeah.
This is a huge show. Emily has put her heart and soul into every single piece. I've had the pleasure of seeing a few sneak peeks and talking to you a little bit about it before. And I think what's so amazing about artists in any industry, whether they're painters or musicians, they really pull from real emotions. Like, these are real things that you go through and that you see people go through. And part of that means that you have to go back to these hard places that you've been in. And we've talked a little bit about how you've been at a good place and you've had to dive down into, the depths of when you were struggling to pull out the beauty for these pieces. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this show. So the show is called Two-Way Reaching, which means, reaching upward and downward, and there's so much symbolism in it. Talk to me about the descent and the meaning of the two-way reaching, what you're trying to portray.
Well, it all started when I thought my life was on a happy little upward trajectory, and I wanted to go higher. And my life, there are a number of life circumstances that all kind of culminated. There was like some court issues, like family related. I dislocated my left shoulder, and I'm left-handed, and went through like a breakup, just all these things that it's just like, wait, what is actually happening? This is madness. And it hit me so hard that, and I didn't want to accept it, but I knew that to go up, I would have to go down, because that is the rhythm of God's creations. You look at Mother Eve, Christ, they descended before they ascended. And for me, I'm nowhere near that level, but I think it's this line upon line. And if we're alive on this earth, still kicking, then, we're gonna be tried. And so it's this like continual, you look at all the seasons, it's like winter comes again, like the fall, the descent, like it comes every year. And so it's not this like hardship, but it's this opportunity, because each time we get to like grow bigger. Like each year, the plant is going to get like a little bit bigger each year. So that definitely helped. But that is what started it all.
So the show is called Two-Way Reaching, the Holy Invitation of the Fertile Dark. What does that title mean?
I'll be honest, I showed it to my dad when I, was kind of like trying to like mull out how to culminate like what I'm trying to say. And I didn't even have the fertile dark. I just had like the dark, the invitation of the dark. And he was pretty scared. He's like, what does this mean? And so I had to really sit with it. But I think the essence of everything that I'm trying to say it comes from St. John of the Cross. And he says, faith is a dark ray to the soul. And when he said that, like, there's like life before this quote and life after this quote. Like, what? And, we hear about like in primary, faith is like a little seed, like it's so cute and like growing. But, what if it's so much slower than that? And sure, maybe like we are the seed, but I'm kind of just dissecting it and coming at it from a different angle. Like maybe faith isn't the seed so much as it's the womb, almost, this darkness that we not only descend into, but we are there. We sit there for a while. And I love that, this like juxtaposition of like light and dark coming together, but it's more of like, there's a poem titled The Bright Abyss, and I think it's just so powerful, like a dark ray to the soul. A ray is not typically
dark.
Very, dark. But it's when these two come together that I think is when it can be so powerful. And so I really wanted to emphasize this darkness being like almost like a tomb, in that like the seed, depending where you're looking at it from, like the seed is falling apart and being buried, and it's like pure panic, right? Like what is happening? Like I'm being like broken apart into a million pieces, versus I'm being planted, and it's like this womb of becoming, of our own individual growth. And so that's what I'm trying to emphasize, but maybe a little bit different than we've heard it before.
No, I think that's beautiful. I would imagine, if the seed was conscious, that as the gardener plants it, what a terrifying moment. But it's the moment that the gardener knows that you can flourish, and they're doing it with purpose. So I think that's beautiful. And faith, that darkness, does it ever really leave? I don't think, you
No.
have to.
Right? You take it with you to other places or up and out, but you're still rooted in it. And that's what makes it so powerful.
Faith is a dark ray to the soul, but from there, where do you go?
Well, I've been painting hope for years now. I have been pretty hung up on the Hebrew translation, how it means to actively wait. And when I first heard that, I just was desperate to know what that meant. And so in painting hope and trying to just dissect it and through these different questions and trying to understand it, I realized that it's not just hope by itself, right? And so there's hope, which is the messy middle, but then there's faith and love on each side of it. And so there's so many scriptures, right, where it's faith, hope, and charity, and the grace of all these is charity. So the end all, we're trying to get to love, but yeah, like you said, how do we if we're down there in the dark, what do we do? We're in this kind of holding space, and I think it's so important to take faith and lead into hope. It's not one without the other. It's not even a progression. It's first faith and then hope, but they're so intertwined. And so I look at faith as from this lens of the flower, and my favorite flower is the peony, and I talk about this a lot, but one year my peonies were just not coming up. I was waiting and waiting weeks, and we had such a long winter, and I was over there thinking this time last year they were blooming, what did I do wrong? In reality, it's just the timing, I just had to wait, and it was almost a whole month of extra waiting, and I don't think the peonies were thinking that, there's just this surrender and trust, okay, this is the timeline. And we like to get in our heads, right? This is crazy overthinking. So I think what's so important to remember about incorporating hope is that hope is not passive, right? We are in the soil, but we are awake. We are conscious. It's not just sitting there on the couch, waiting for God to solve our problems. It's I accept this moment as if I had chosen it. I surrender to God's plan, and I will make the most out of it. So, yeah, the peonies were there under the ground, but they weren't just twiddling their thumbs. It's okay, do we reach out our roots? Are we prepping, for the leaves to expand to get more light? So there's so much that we can be doing. And so from this symbology standpoint of hope, through the flower, I think it's a really powerful representation that maybe we're not yet blooming, but we are programmed to bloom. And we just have to trust and make the most out of this present moment, knowing full well, in the right time that we will finally come up and out of the darkness and we will bloom. But we all have our different timelines, and, each flower blooms differently.
I love that. So we've got faith as soil, then you have hope as a flower. Talk to me about how you've depicted love as a tree and the two-way reaching concept you've been diving into.
Yeah, so I can't get enough of, obviously, the symbology of all of this, but the overarching umbrella of everything is the garden. And so you take our story of origin, the Garden of Eden, that's kind of where it all began. And I was trying to think of earlier this year I explored what the serpent, the original meaning of the serpent could mean, and how it's Jesus Christ, the brazen serpent, and trying to kind of understand our story of origin from a symbology standpoint, but was pretty intimidated by this tree of life and love. How do you even get there? I am not the tree. I don't even know if I'm a plant. I feel more of this bird flying up in the sky, just again that kind of frantic space. And so being willing to, like Eve, descend and be buried, like it's terrifying. But it's also kind of terrifying to grow into this tree of like being so solid that you're able to give your fruit to others. Like, how do you even get to that point? And you think about what a tree has to go through. Like, it's such a slow process of becoming, and it's season after season, right? And so I think it's really beautiful that almost like an iceberg, right? You look at the iceberg, it's like the little tip is above the surface, but what's going on underneath? And I mean, a tree's roots are so vast, so incredibly vast. And what is so beautiful is they're all connected with each other. Like they are sending nutrients back and forth, like they are communicating. There's so much happening under the surface. And so I imagine, you know, really like digging in these roots and just getting like a sure foundation. Like that's the most important. And so that's where like faith and hope, you know, come in. And so you're building up this solid foundation that you can start to rise up. And again, it's that like patience and trust and showing up, like you're willing to show up year after year. And I think the more light that you're able to receive in the process, that you're able to have enough like to keep going. You know, it's like we get these tender mercies from heaven, and it's like, okay, I am on the right path. Like I am going to keep reaching. As much effort as it takes, it's worth it. And so I think the more we are able to like see that vision of like, this is what Eve did, this is what Christ did, like they have shown us the way, and it's worth it. And so I will keep reaching. And then when you are able to get to a point where you're, you know, reaching all the way up and getting like the most light, that's when the canopy of the tree is spread out, you know, so far and wide. And that's when you get the title crowning. And I don't know why that just like hit me so hard. Like that is what I am reaching for, you know, this crowning of heaven, almost this like well done, you good and faithful servant, you know, like you are in a place that you can give of your fruits. Like we trust you. And I think it's so powerful because our connection with heaven is a two-way trust, you know, like, yeah, we have to like actively trust that God's going to show up and like take care of us, but also like, can God trust us that we are going to not mess up and like hurt other people or hurt ourselves? And so I feel like that is like kind of crowning moment, like, yes, like produce your fruit and go and help others. And so that is like the ultimate goal. And yeah, I don't even know, like I want to like emphasize it so much that I'm like getting tripped up over my words because I feel it in my heart, but I'm obviously not there. So I'm like, I get glimpses, but that's why I want this show to be, you know, this almost like place where we all come together and we question and we build off of each other and we talk about it. I think that's the most important thing, is like being willing to just come together and learn. That's what the etymology of disciple is, to be a learner. And so if we're willing to do that, then I think that's the most important part.
There's so much symbolism in what you just said, and I want to make sure that everyone listening understands the deep, profound, beautiful symbolism that went into that. Because like you've said and so many other people have said, Christ, God, he has a perfect plan. Everything is created with purpose. And the connection that you've made between our life and those of plants, I think, is so beautiful. We start as a little seed and we're put in the dirt and the dark, scary. You know, we're born into this scary world. And there's so much more to us than what people see on the surface. Like you said, like you're so much more than just this artist that I get to see at a show. Like you have a life and you have struggles and you have family, just like each and every one of us. And so there's more beneath the surface than people really see. And what's beneath the surface is that web of connection that we all have. Like, you know, you help me and your kids help you and you're just feeding off of each other. But our end goal is to reach upward, and it's the light of Christ that brings that to us. What I want you to dive a little bit deeper into is what is crowning of a tree, and what do you feel like crowning in our lives looks like?
I'm glad you asked that because I might even just follow up with more questions because that's honestly what I'm trying to understand myself. And I really think it's fascinating to understand like the values and traits of the divine and being able to integrate those into our lives.
So with all of this symbolism of, relating us to other creations that God has made, a huge point is the descent. As we dive down into the soil, and bring our roots. Talk to me about the relationship and the symbolism of the descent that we have, the descent of a seed into the soil, and the descent of Jesus Christ.
Thank you for asking that. This is, I think, one of the most powerful questions that, again, I'm still just building off of, and I would love to, forever build off of. But I think it's really important that the more we're able to know ourselves, we're able to know God. And until we are willing to face ourselves fully, even the scary parts, even the parts we want to, run away from, like that is like the descending into the dark personally. But I think it's really profound to consider that, that is exactly what Christ did. And not only did he face, what darkness did he have? But he faced everyone's darkness, everyone's like shadow parts of themselves that they are scared of. Like he knows it all. And I think it's really profound that, to really know, coming back to what we were talking about with the worthy and being seen, like you break down the word intimacy, like into me see, but like being like really deeply connected to somebody, it's like when you feel seen by them, when they know you deeply. And that is what Christ was willing to do for us and show us exactly how we had to do it. And so would I be willing to go down into the dark if I didn't have that example? Heck no. But Christ did it and showed us what is possible tenfold, right? A trillionfold. But I think it's really profound too, just coming from a feminine perspective, that we are gifted with like Christ's example and Eve's example. So it is this like male and female side of like, we're giving you like all of it. Like this, here's what you need to do. But I think it's just such a gift that Christ was willing to descend and in this like essence fall apart, but like feel it all and be so completely overwhelmed and then rise up. And I think, you look at like a tree trunk, it's so sure and rising upward. And that is like the most important thing, is like being in alignment. I think the atonement broken down at one mint, you have to be at one with yourself so that you can be at one with other. That other being God, as well as, those that you love, that you're in relationship with. And so I think the more aligned we can be through Christ's example, through the atonement, this at one mint, like that is alignment. And that, tree trunk that is solid and true and rising like straight, I feel like is such a beautiful visualization of alignment, of at one mint.
What I love with all this symbolism, the core root of this show is to just help people follow Christ and his example, to walk in his footsteps, to do the things that he did, because at the end of this entire road, at the end of our journey, as we reach for the sky, what we're really reaching for is the light, the sun, because that's what nourishes everything. And that journey is, we're just trying to find our way back to him.
Exactly.
And I love that. So we've got your show, November 6th. If you've made it this far, you have to come. We will see you there. You'll be painting live multiple days throughout that week. So make sure to tune in and just come in and meet Emily. She's just awesome.
Yeah, I think it'd be really fun to just, again, question all of this. Like, I don't have the answers, but I do want to explore it, not just individually, but together. And so, yeah, November 6th is the opening reception night. And then, yeah, I'll be painting live a few days after that. And then the show runs all of November. So plenty of opportunity to come and question together.
You've got another super exciting surprise coming in November. We can't say too much here, but you are creating a new piece with a well-known individual here in Utah. Her name's Nicole. She's an incredible inspiration to a lot of people. And you're creating this piece about this descent. You know, it's the Garden of Gethsemane and what took place there and how the divine feminine is, you know, integrated into that experience. So walk me through a little bit of the symbolism that you have going on, and then yeah, they'll have to stay tuned to see the actual piece later, but walk me through the symbolism and what you're trying to portray with this collaboration.
It is very exciting, and I cannot wait to share more. There's definitely going to be a lot more coming soon, but before I talked a lot about the Garden of Eden, right? Under this umbrella, it's the garden that we're able to step into our pattern of becoming. But this garden is the Garden of Gethsemane, and it's that same teaching opportunity, but it does draw a lot upon that ache and that pain. When I think about the Garden of Gethsemane, and I can only draw upon, you know, my greatest pain and suffering to even possibly like get a small amount, you know, of understanding of what Christ went through. But I think from a physical sense, giving birth has been like the hardest physical thing that I've ever experienced. And what added to it was that I did not have my husband there at the time. He was deployed, and so it was me and my mom and my midwife. And when you're giving birth, you know, you need your person, whoever it is, like you need that hand to like really dig into, and like that is our comfort. You know, we cannot do that alone. And I think it's so beautiful. There's so many overlaps of birth and the atonement, even down to, you know, the shedding of blood and water. But I think it's such a beautiful thing that as Christ was, you know, birthing the atonement, that he too didn't have to be alone, and that this angel came to comfort him and be with him. And, you know, I come back to my experience of giving birth, you know, having my mom there, of anyone, like, talk about the most comforting person that could possibly be. And we don't know, you know, who this angel was, but from my artist lens, I have taken the liberty to explore, you know, this ultimate divine feminine, our Heavenly Mother, being there and comforting him. And I think it's quite profound, honestly. And so this is everything that I'm kind of exploring leading into. But another thing that's pretty powerful is throughout ancient tradition, trees, groves specifically, are connected to wisdom. And in Hebrew, wisdom is feminine. Like, it is a person that is feminine and is a divine feminine, you know, attribute. And so I think it's, you know, not by chance that I have this Heavenly Mother coming to comfort Christ, but he's also surrounded by these trees, this grove, this wisdom. And so he's being able to draw upon like that power as well. And so I think I'm trying to explore, like, again, we don't have like all of the answers, and that's where it's fun as an artist. You get to just take all the liberties. But I'm trying to explore, like, not only Christ's experience, but how we can relate to that in our own lives. Like, you know, if I feel like I'm going through my own mini Gethsemane and my own dark night of the soul, like, who am I going to reach out to, and who am I going to be comforted by, and how? And so I think there's just so much that we can break down from all of this.
I think it's no coincidence that you had the opportunity to explore these groves of trees and the symbolism in the different gardens to then depict the greatest moment, which is when Christ was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and what that means and how you can grow from that. We are super excited to have you at the show. We're super excited to launch this new piece with you. And I just want to give you the last little moment. Thanks for coming on the show, but is there something you want to leave, the listeners with?
Thank you. Absolutely. Again, I don't have answers. I wish I could just be like, here's what we all need to do, but it's more of just leaving with a question of, where are you at in your journey of becoming? Where are you at in this garden space of growth? And if you are nervous to descend, is it possible to see it as an opportunity? If you are in that fertile darkness, how can you surrender and trust in Christ's ray? And it is that paradox, right? That bright abyss, but it is Christ's invitation, I believe, to all of us. And so how can we lean into it, even continue reaching downward, and then being willing to sit in it as long as it takes? And that is no easy thing. And so that's definitely a question that is very much on my heart that I would love to leave our listeners with.